You may recognize our next fighter from the BBC series Chess Masters. It's got some serious fans in here tonight. He is also an actor and is qualified in stage combat. Let's see how he does in the real ring tonight. Let's welcome our next fighter in the white corner, Cai Brigden! And joining him in the black corner, he was the under-16s British chess champion. Put your hands together for Daan the Wall Hall. Ladies and gentlemen, get ready for our second fight of this evening. In the white corner, Cai Brigden. In the black corner, Daan the Wall Hall. Make some noise!
Daan Hall, a superb chess player, a former England international against Cai Brigden, charismatic actor, swordsman, star of your screen, once shared a scene with Shane Ritchie, no less. And he is here today to prove that his chess is every bit as good as his swordsmanship. And that's the bell. Let's see, Cai, what you have in store for us today. I remember from the Chess Master series that you're a
We have a Reti, a knight f3. A Reti opening. No, neither player is committing their central pawns too early. They are getting the snipers on the edge of the board.
Yep. White is fianchettoing. C6. We're seeing C4 here, something of a Catalan. D4, nice and steady, nice and steady.
Very mature chess going on here, isn't it, Matt?
Very, very mature, Anthony. Very mature indeed. Bishop G4, bishop outside the pawn chain. I like that. Something that was a little bit tender for black in the previous game. Knight E4 is a good move. Black doesn't want to swap that dark square bishop off for the knight, which will be left offside, so it moves it back to F5. Very sensible chess so far. Pretty faultless as it goes.
Very professional chess. I had a chance to parlay with both these players backstage, and actually Daan wanted to give a shout out, two shout outs to his wife Helena and also his girlfriend Sarah.
That went down very well with them. I could hear in the crowd. Now, one thing to note here, the pace of the moves is a lot quicker than the last fight, where it's a very slow opening. It might be positional in nature, but they're getting through the opening quite quick. I think we might see some action erupt on the board a bit quicker than the last bout, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, Cai, as the slightly less experienced chess player, has done really well here. I would say C5 is a
It's committal.
Well,
anti-positional.
Positionally, it's a bit anti-positional because now B6 is going to be a useful pawn hook for black, and then black will follow up with C5 and either an open A file or ultimately an open C file. I think C5 is a little bit tricky. Also, E5 might come in the future.
The other thing here, Matt, is that the white's best piece was that bishop on G2, potentially. Now he's kind of denied himself a way of levering it open for his bishop there, which is potentially going to be blunted for the rest of the game. So white is going to have to think, where am I going to get my activity here? Maybe one area he could stick his knight on that juicy-looking square on E5, where it would also gain a tempo attacking the queen.
Well, I suppose there's a useful idea now, particularly because the downside of playing B6 is that the C6 pawn is temporarily a little bit raw. So knight to E5 now would make a ton of sense, although Daan is potentially preparing to meet that with F6. I've got to say, I think Daan has a tiny advantage, but both sides play very, very sensibly, very professionally. A real credit to the sport of chess boxing.
Maybe. So white has a little bit of a space advantage. However, black has a little bit more flexibility in the center. And this was because of what Matt said earlier, white pushing that C-pawn a little bit too far up the board. There was no pressure, more in the center, and black can later on think about opening up the center. And this is a very high-level way of playing the game.
I mean, as we saw with the previous match, ultimately both sides played incredibly sensibly, and then one side made a blunder, an unforced error. And white is now slightly more likely to make that unforced error because, one, he has fewer plausible pawn breaks, and two, his pieces just don't have
I like this
many
move. What do you think? Do you like this move? Do you like this move, F3?
I like the move F3 a lot.
It kicks it back. But let's also talk about that pawn on C6. So white does have an option to exchange his C pawn for the B pawn. Opens up the C file. He's got his knight on E5. maybe he can get some queenside pressure going here once he's developed that undeveloped bishop
Absolutely.
on C1.
I think b6 was not the right way of attacking the center. I think black should have played for his own e5 break and taking advantage of that
F6 and
c5.
E5, I think,
F6
also kicked
at some
back the
point.
knight.
I suppose the thing to consider as well is that once you've taken b6 and the b pawn is hanging, and also you've got the half-open a file. So it's slightly double-edged. I still quite like this for black, but yes, appreciate e5 might have been a nice way of playing it as well. Ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, you've been treated to some really high-quality chess here. Let's hope that bloody hell, that was that reserve a round of applause. And another round of chess!
Chess! Chess! Chess! Chess! Chess!
Because my God, these boys deserve it. What a wonderful performance they've served up, ladies and gentlemen, as we prepare to enter the first round of boxing.
They have been building the tension on the chessboard, for the chessboard and for the boxing.
Well, these two look like they've trained hard, two fine
These guys
specimens.
look fit.
They will need it in this sweltering arena on this, the hottest day of the year so far. We see some hot chess action. Will they match it in the ring?
I think the tension that has been building up on the chessboard might just be released in the boxing ring, which is what we all come to see chess boxing
We have
for.
all come for a release of the tension today, and I think that is what we will be treated to in this round of boxing.
Both participants look super, super motivated. They've clearly trained incredibly hard. I think there's going to be a huge amount of heart. I think it's going to be very high caliber. But let's see who strikes the first blow.
Okay.
Both very similar in physique. I would expect them to try and establish the jab first and early, Anthony. What do you think here?
Well, I think Daan has the reach advantage, but Cai, as being the slightly lower-rated chess player, I think is going to come aggressive in here. And he is. Oh, he's got him in the corner. There was a good gut punch there.
Good
I saw a
counter
good
right.
gut punch.
Good counter right, but then Daan coming. Yeah, overhead right there.
A bit
from
wild.
Cai. Didn't quite connect. That's clearly the punch he's looking for.
There was a jab. There was a clear jab from White.
So Cai, being the slightly shorter man, is looking to work his way in.
Oh!
That said, Daan was bullying him in the corner there, unloading a couple of excellent hooks. And again,
there was a
coming in
clear
there.
right to the face there from Cai.
Caught on his way in, Dan. Just as he was looking to land the right hook, Cai timed him perfectly, using his own momentum to use a technical phrase, to smack him very hard in the face. Back after that brief respite, Daan now looking to establish the jab and the straight right.
That was a lovely duck out of the corner. Impressive stuff from Cai here. I like his head movement. It's very impressive. He is in this to win it.
In it to win it, ducking and weaving, but that said, got caught there by Daan, who, as the supposed better chess player, weaker boxer, has landed.
There's a little bit of a smile there from Daan, I think.
Well,
Yeah, you like to see that.
I don't know that Daan is necessarily the weaker boxer, to be honest. It's a little bit of an unknown in terms of...
Oh my God! Ladies and gentlemen, it is now a wrestling match. This is now a wrestling match.
Legal.
Forget about the boxing.
Taking
This is chess, boxing, and wrestling.
taking it down to the mat. I think there's a bit of both of them to blame for that one. No one takes the blame. Yeah. A well-earned breather, I think, as they both gather their forces for the assault. At the end of the round, the bell catches them there. Again,
That was a treat. That was a treat.
was excellent.
That was a treat.
Absolutely fantastic. I mean,
Anthony, as we come back to the board, what's the situation we come back to here? Whose position do you like and why?
I like Black's position. I think Black is more solid. I think Black has more options to make genuine central breaks that aren't too loosening. However, this being said, I think his pawn on b6 makes his pawn on c6 a little bit loose. So I'm not sure.
yeah, it's very, very double-edged, ladies and gentlemen. We were discussing, we felt that Black had a slight advantage, but actually, both sides have some quite interesting pawn breaks. White can play e4, White can take on b6 and try to attack c6, but then his b4 pawn is a bit drafty, his a4 pawn is a bit drafty, and Black may potentially play c5 himself.
F6. F6 is the right idea. Absolutely the right idea.
I agree.
And this is why I liked Black's position. F6, e5. Black is well positioned to make this kind of break because of White's advancing that pawn too early.
So he's taken on d7, ladies and gentlemen. The knights are off the board. leaving us with a very, very level game.
What do you think to E4 here as the plan for White, maybe? Maybe he's eyeing up a central brick. Yep, he's
Well, he
swung his rook back.
he
That's what he's
absolutely
eyeing
is
up.
preparing it. Black would love to play E5 here, but it doesn't quite work.
That rook does not want to sit beside a stationary pawn. It is sitting there to push that pawn for one reason and one reason only.
We're going to see a pawn break, ladies and gentlemen. He's going to play E4.
Whoa! There it is. And the good thing about E4 is it gives life to both that rook behind it and potentially that bishop that's been sitting a bit inactive on G2 in front of the king. So the game is going to open up here now after White's made that push. Is he going to push it on further? Is he going to exchange, or is he going to develop another piece?
Yeah,
all options.
H4 is a really interesting move. It's incredibly aggressive.
I don't
on the
like
one
that.
hand,
I
but
don't
I'm not,
like that.
But
no.
yeah, I suppose
the
that's
center
the
is
thing.
too open to play on the wing.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right. And he's played G4. I think Kai is true to his reputation in Chess Masters, creating chaos on the board. Unfortunately,
This
it's
is
chaos that he may
tactically
himself
bad.
be the victim of. That H4 pawn is a little bit weak.
So you look at where
So
all the
black
pawns
is-
are. White's advanced all the pawns now after this take back.
Yeah.
All the pawns will be the 4th rank and above.
And when you advance your kingside pawns, you leave yourself vulnerable in the center to the center opening up. So Daan has done exactly the right thing. He's making pawn exchanges in the center, exposing weak pawns in the center.
I mean, can you take on F3 here? That doesn't look quite right, but I wonder, in theory, it could win a pawn. What happens if you take on F3 here?
You take black's bishop, black takes your bishop, you can take
Honestly,
a pawn on
I think
H7,
there's no-
and
There's
There's
no
no
messy.
need. There's no need.
No,
I like the way
there's a-
Daan's doing it. He's just
yeah.
doing that. He's going to win the pawn on D4. Simple way of playing. Principled.
Queen
Well
takes
done,
D4,
Daan.
Queen takes D4, and he's done it! The dam has burst! Dan has burst the dam, and Cai Brigden has suddenly, after playing admirably aggressively, both on the board and in the ring, in quite a lot of trouble, Anthony.
Oh my Bosh. He may be in trouble.
So he's lost a pawn, and it looks like the queens are off. So we're entering an end game where black has the advantage of an extra pawn and a very well-placed rook there.
So the rook can take on B4, can it not? Rook
Yep,
takes
two
B4, he's
pawns.
done it! Everything is falling.
Five
Everything
pawns are
is
dropping
falling.
like flies here.
And now, I don't know, A5, I think A5 is probably, feels like it's best here, but, you know, it's not a lot. You've just got to pass C-pawn at the end, but maybe you just need to activate the rook and hope for the best. Ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, we will get at least one more round of boxing where Cai Brigden is going to need to do more of those spears and hugs and other MMA-like moves if he wants to survive.
However, in the meantime, chess, 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 chess.
Let's count the
Rook
pawns.
D4.
Dan Black has
No! Rook B2. I
two
like Rook
extra
B2.
pawns,
Belong
and
on
he's
the
attacking
7th
the
rank
bishop.
or the 2nd rank. Very, very principled from Dan Hall. I love the way he is playing this game.
They don't just pick anyone for the England juniors, ladies and gentlemen, and my goodness, did he earn it.
So if you're white here, you probably move the bishop to E3, gain, just get it safe, open up the file, maybe swing a rook onto the D file, do something to get some sort of activity here.
Yeah, I mean, unlike the last game, we saw White does still have stuff at least, like he can do stuff, but yeah, definitely advantage Dan after that last round.
These two gentlemen came out absolutely furiously in the last round, and I think they are both ready to go again.
I mean, I'd go so far as to say that Kai is actively a pretty good chess player, and yes, I think he will know that he's in trouble here. So let's see. Let's see.
Dan looking to establish the jab again. That said, it quickly turns into the same pattern as the first round, which is the one that we wanted to see, which is them juking it out and swinging for the posts. Some lusty blows on both sides. Oh, Anthony, that one almost landed the big overhand right there from Kai again. Missed by a whisker.
But I like the way Dan has come out here. It's always important to avoid the trap of being in a better position and therefore just trying to relax. He came out actively and aggressively, exactly the right strategy. Kai also
good
really
left
trying to put
hook.
pressure. Admirable from both parties here.
Excellent left hook landed just then by Kai. Took the wind out of Dan's sails somewhat, and he's backed off just to get his breath back.
And this is critical, given the nature of the chess, as we said, if we consider that black is a clear 2 pawns up, but there are still chances for white, actually a bit of discombobulation is definitely to Cai's benefit.
Well, exactly. Scramble the mind a little bit. You never know what can happen in the transition to the chest. That said, Daan also landing a right there. Both fighters breathing very
taking a
heavily.
breath there. There's been a lot of activity so far that we cannot fault them for taking a breath there.
A lot of activity, and let's not downplay the effect of the conditions here. Anthony is a man who's been under the heat of the lights recently. What's the heat and the weather going to do to them both there?
They will both be probably feeling like throwing up, but also they don't know we're in the room. They've completely forgotten about us. All that exists to each of these guys is the man standing in front of them and that chest grain in the back of their head.
It's amazing, isn't it? We talk about chess boxing as a hybrid sport, and one of the things that really tethers the two together is the concept of flow. Time will have
Lovely
been
right
rendered
there.
Beautiful
meaningless
stuff.
to them right now, and that was a really beautiful round. I think both sides equipped themselves really well.
I doubt we're going to see an end in this chess round here.
If you're Cai, that's what you want to do. Get through this, buy yourself one last crack at it in the boxing. You never know what's going to happen.
No, absolutely, absolutely. 3 minutes 19, though. I mean, we could end up in a position where Cai finishes this with maybe only a minute left and Daan survives the next round of boxing, and then it is going to be quite comparable to what we saw in the last bout. So the next couple of moves are absolutely critical. White has a couple of really fascinating pawn breaks. Black has 2 clear pawns up, and here we go. We have
Daan shut down
E5
E5
immediately.
Very sensible.
E5 is a superb move from the man from Swindon, and Rook B1 I like very, very much as well. Classy, classy stuff from the two. So, what do we think about swapping rooks? Or a move like Rook E2 here? Is that ludicrous? Rook E2 and Bishop C5 was what I was thinking here, because now the B6 pawn is under a little bit
It's
of...
drafty, isn't it?
Yeah,
now?
Bishop C5 is a really nice move, because if you take, you've got double pawns, but you play C4, and you're basically saying that the A pawn is not particularly fast, which it isn't.
I don't know. It is
Bishop
compensation.
F1 will pick it
no,
up.
I don't
After
like this
C4,
at all
Bishop
for Black.
F1 might... Yeah. The A pawn's gone forward. Bishop F1 can kind of keep the C
Can
pawn
you
under.
play
Quite
Bishop?
wanted.
Yeah, I suppose like Bishop
It's
C.
complication.
Yeah, it has actually suddenly got a bit complicated, hasn't it? So Bishop, so yeah, the Rook has to go behind. You can't play, so Bishop A F1, as you say. I mean, the pawn blocks it off. Cai has done well here. Things have started getting a bit tricky.
Very well.
That bishop on G2 was looking like an overgrown pawn, but now it's attacking the C pawn. I think Daan is going to weather this storm, but it's a bit more complicated than he would have liked. So the kings are going to come in. The kings are critical pieces in the endgame, ladies and gentlemen, because they're not going to get checkmated, but by God are they critical for getting your pawns up the board. I
can see a position here, Matt, where all the pawns on the queen side get exchanged off. Then that becomes harder to win for Black when the pawns are on the same side.
Yeah, but now, actually now, that sort of sneaky little chance for White has kind of gone, because we've swapped everything off, and after Rook takes A6, this is a fairly comfortable endgame for Black.
Yeah.
Really, Cai has to play for the boxing here, because Black has got 2 extra pawns. The C pawn, which is in a real trouble, well, it's got a real...
No, he blundered a Rook! Oh my God!
Is he going to resign?
Oh no!
Slow down, slow down, Cai.
Yeah.
Slow down and do some more boxing.
That's it. That's the equivalent of a knockout, but the knockout where the boxer is able to just roll around on the mat until the bell rings. This is awful. This is absolutely awful, but Cai
it is
has
very
a little
sad.
hope because of the boxing.
Because that was a lovely game up until that point.
Cai
And I
still
thought
got-
we were going to see it grinded out ending there.
Oh, it's mated a couple of moves now. It's checkmated a couple of moves, ladies and gentlemen. It's mated 2. King
It's
of the
over.
Rook, and it's
It's
over.
over. It's over.
Let's hear it for our fighters. What a fight. And the winner is, it was so close, Daan.